Making copper tanks in the workshop. When using 16-gauge copper tubing to make condensers and water tanks, the ends of the tubes must be perfectly square. This is how I do it, or should I say, the first part of this video is how I used to do it. Because once upon a time I used to make condensers commercially and sell them via my website. I even used to clad them in mahogany. Making these condensers, usually for model boats, ended up being a non-profit making exercise. I used to get the metal parts engraved by a local company. Many people didn't understand how these condensers worked, so I made a video about it. And here are some clips from it. I used to buy the copper tubing cut to size from Blackgates Engineering, and I still do that. The job starts by using this deburring tool to remove the inner rough edges to allow the insertion of a supporting mandrel that I made. I made a plug for the tube that was a snug fit, made from mild steel. Then I clamped the entire assembly in the chuck. The mild steel mandrel had a centre in it, and you can see me actually machining the copper here with a live centre fitted to keep everything concentric. I found that I couldn't go very fast when I was machining the copper, so I used to run the lathe in back gear, which slowed it down. As it says on the screen, copper is a very soft metal, so you can only take fine cuts. I machined first one end and then turned the part round and did the other end, and I'm using a deburring tool to clean up the inside, and a file to clean up the outside edge. This video even has a health and safety warning. For safety reasons, make sure that the file is fitted with a handle. The problem is, now things have changed and I make a lot of different size condenser tanks and water tanks for different applications. This clip is part of a current project. It's the lower half of a special water tank which catches the overflow from a live steam injector. I could make a mandrel for this, but it's very time consuming. I'd have to use my Smart & Brown lathe because it's larger. This lathe is fitted with a large 4-jaw self-centering chuck. I suppose I could hold the piece of copper like this. But from experience, doing it this way really is not a good idea. The cuts on the edges to start with are intermittent. If I started to turn the part like this, disaster would be just around the corner. When I spin the chuck, you can see just how out of square the front part of the copper tube is. And this is a very short piece of tube, but it would be destroyed if I tried to turn it. This is a longer piece of tube for a water tank that I'm making. The large chuck on the Smart & Brown lathe is more than big enough to hold this, but once again, if I tried to turn the end with it being so far from the chuck, it wouldn't be a good thing. There are many ways to turn tubing. I'm not going to cover them in this episode. I use a quick and simple way of doing it these days, and it doesn't even involve any lathe work. Time to go into the outer part of the workshop. And the shorter piece of metal tube, the base for the water tank, is sat on the 4-inch belt sander. This is what I'm going to use to square it up. Some viewers might be thinking, well, that's not a very good idea, is it? Very unmechanical. Yes, indeed. But by using one of these, a set square, and a bit of practice, it really is quite easy to achieve a perfect tank, with all the edges at 90 degrees to the barrel. Before starting this job, I'm just checking how good this is, and it's not bad at all. I could just grind the ends of this tube and say, thanks for watching and I hope you found it useful, but there's a lot more to it than I'm showing here. The belt moves from right to left, and the part of the belt on the right hand side contacts the edges of the tube first, which generally removes a little bit more material. You have to bear this in mind. Really though, like anything, all you need to do is practice, and you'll find it very simple after a while. I'm also using the belt sander to remove the sharp edges after the initial cut. The way that you hold this piece of metal on the belt sander is really important. You must use both hands. If you hold it with one hand, it will wobble about and you won't get a good result. Here I'm checking all the way round to make sure that the edge is square, and it is, so now moving to the other side, once again holding the part very carefully with two hands. It is just a case of getting a feel for the job and knowing how much pressure to put on the piece and how much copper's been removed. In reality, you don't need to put hardly any pressure on because copper's a very soft metal and the belt sander is not soft in the slightest. I find I can do this entirely by eye, but if you want to have a go and you find out you're not getting good results, spin the part in the chuck and put a felt tip pen in the tool holder. That will make a line on the copper. Then all you have to do is just grind away the black line and everything should be fine. Once again, I'm removing the sharp edges after getting it square. This is how not to do it. Holding it with one hand just makes it dance about and it's almost impossible to get it square. Using two hands stabilizes it. It's extremely important to check the part regularly with the set square to make sure that you're not grinding at an angle. All the set square is doing is telling you whether the ends of the tube are square or not with the main barrel. So when you find that it's not, you rotate the tube and take some off the other side. And finally, by being very gentle and getting a feel for it, you will get good results. I've edited this video to shorten the sequence because the amount of checking with the set square was very frequent indeed. Here I'm removing the sharp edges because this part is now square. And just in case you're confused, I know the piece of tube is not square, it's round. I'm talking about the 90-degree angle between the end of it and the barrel. If you don't get this part of the job right, your water tank will resemble a small scale model of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It took me about 15 minutes to shape these pieces of tube on the belt sander, which is far quicker than setting it up in a lathe. And here are the 3 pieces of copper tubing that I'm going to be using in the steam plant. It's time for me to go, and the final clip is taken from the video that I made showing how to make a condenser. Stay safe, stay healthy, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.